Hello everybody and welcome back to another Flutter tutorial. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is actually adding Google Authentication and Google Sign-In to our Flutter application. So we're going to replace our current login screen, which is just, enter a name, with an actual button that says sign in with Google. That will bring up the Google sign-in. Someone can then sign in from there and they will stay signed in until they sign out or they reinstall the app or whatever it is. But regardless, that's what we're going to be working on. So let's go ahead and get started. So we had a bunch of setup we did in the last video related to getting Firebase working with our app. Assuming that you guys have done that, we're pretty much ready to go. There's a few small steps we need to follow, one thing on the Firebase website, but it shouldn't take us more than a few minutes. So we just need to go to this pubspec.yaml file, and there's two packages that we need to add that we're going to be using here. So this is Firebase Authentication and Google Sign-In. So just simply add these two lines into the dependencies section of your pubspec.yaml file. These are just packages or plugins or whatever you want to call them that need to be downloaded so that we can use them within our file, right? Sorry, within our project. So we can have, Firebase Auth, create a Firebase instance, actually sign in with Google. We just need these two things. So put them in here, save the file. It should automatically run Flutter pub get. If for some reason it doesn't run that and you're in VS Code, you can type pub and then get packages. Otherwise, just run that command in your actual terminal or in your command line. So Flutter pub get, and that should get all the packages that you need. Okay, now that we're in here, what we're actually going to do is preemptively add something. I'll talk about, or I guess show you how to add that after, but we're going to comment out where it says assets right here. And we're just going to go tab in once, put a hyphen, and simply type assets with a /. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to add a folder. Actually, you can see that I already have it added, but I'll go through the steps again, into our root directory here that says assets, and that's going to store an image that we're going to need to use, which is actually a logo for Google. So if I click on this assets folder here, I added this. So if you guys don't have that, then just make a new folder. So assets like that. And then you're going to download a logo from the link in the description, which I'll show you in just 1 second, and throw that inside of the assets folder. So let me just go here. You can see I actually have the page open. Oops, this link will be in the description. Simply download this, just click the download button, then grab that and drag that into the assets folder here, and just make sure you name it Google logo, and it doesn't have, like a bracket 1 or bracket 2 or whatever on the end of it. Well, it can have that, but if it does, just remember that you have that because we're going to need to reference this name later on. But anyways, we've just linked the assets folder up, so we're all good here. Now we need to do a few other things in our Android folder. So we're going to go into our Android folder, we're going to go to settings.gradle, and we actually need to modify this file just to fix a bug that's happening with the current version of these two packages. So I don't actually know why this bug has occurred or exactly what's going wrong. All I know is that we're not going to be able to run this app unless we make the following addition. So we just need to copy some code, which again, I will have in the description or some way for you to access it in the description into this file. So you can see that from line 17 to 29, this is new code. I've just copied this in from my other screen. Again, this will be in the description, but grab it and paste it in here. This will just fix a bug, hopefully, that will actually make this work properly for us. I will also leave a link to the GitHub issue if you have questions about why we need to add this. Again, I'm not sure. All I know is when I added this, project worked. So that's good. All right. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the app level build.gradle file. So within Android app build.gradle, and we're simply going to go here to the min SDK version and change this to 21. The reason for this is, again, the packages we're using don't work properly under the SDK version of 21. So just to avoid any errors, we're going to change the minimum version to 21. Just note that this will mean that your app will not be able to run on any SDK version lower than 21. That's fine because I'm pretty sure probably like 99% of devices are above SDK version 21 already. But if you do care about that few percent, then you're gonna have to find another workaround. This was my workaround for the issue that I was having. So looking through my kind of instruction sheet on my other screen, I think that's all we need to do. And now what we should be able to do is actually go ahead and start working with the Google sign-in. So we're going to go actually to our Firebase console. So just go to Firebase console like that, Firebase console. and we're going to go to our project. So I'm going to get to my project. I'm in the wrong account right now, and then I'll show you how we can actually set up the different sign-in methods. Okay, so I'm in my message app right here. I'm in the Firebase console. Once you're inside of your app, you're going to go to the Authentication tab, and then you're going to go to sign-in method. So here you can see I've actually already enabled a sign-in method. I just clicked on the one that I wanted. So in this case, it was Google. It asked me a few different things here. It asked you to put in your support email, which I'm going to blur for myself, and a few other things as well. But just fill this in. We've already done the SH1 fingerprint thing. That's what we did in the last video. Simply just click save after you select your support email, and then the supported sign-in method, which is Google, will be working. So that's all we actually need to do is just click on Google and just follow through the steps so that it's set up and working. If you do care to add some other things like Twitter, Facebook, you can do that. But again, I'm not going to really be showing us how we set that up. Now let's go back to authentication here. You can see it says what my current user is. So right now in this app, we have one user, which is just me. I was just testing this out previously, so that's why I have that. You won't have any users here. And then you can see my unique user ID. So just a note here, whenever you're looking at users and you're trying to identify unique users, you're going to use this UID, which is just their unique identifier. And yeah, that's just a good note. So if you need to identify users for some reason, just in case I don't say this later, use their UID. All right, so now we have that all set up within Firebase. Again, all I'm asking you to do is just go to sign in, click on Google, follow through these steps and just say that that is enabled, and then we should be good to go. Okay, so I'm going to close that out now, and I'm going to go back into my files here. So I'm going to go into lib, and I'm going to make a new file called auth.dart. Now, this is going to be the file that handles all of our authentication related stuff. This is actually going to be a fairly large file with just two methods, pretty much Google sign in and Google sign out. So when we want to sign in, we will call the Google sign in method that will prompt and bring up the Google sign in page. Then the user will sign in and it will return to us what user actually signed in. Then we have a sign out. All that will do is just simply sign out the current user. Now, Google handles all of the hashes, all of the password stuff, which is really nice, which means we don't have to have like, a sign up here page or anything like that. We can just say sign in with Google. If you don't have a Google account, just make a Google account and then you can sign it. Get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import package : / and then Firebase. And this is going to be Firebase auth / Firebase auth.dart. So we need this package. You can guess what this is. It's simply just all of the stuff related to Firebase and authentication. Next, we need to import the Google sign-in, which is going to handle actually, popping up that Google sign-in window and everything. So we're going to go package : Google sign, and then I believe that's Google sign-in / Google sign-in.dart. So you should get those auto completions because this is really annoying to type if you don't have those, but these are the two packages we need. Next, we're going to set up a Firebase instance and a Google sign-in instance. So these are what we're going to use as the main instances to handle all the stuff related to Firebase, and then obviously all the stuff related to Google. Kind of hard to give a better explanation than that, but I'm just going to say final Firebase auth, and I'm just going to go _auth equals Firebase auth dot instance. So getting an instance of Firebase, and then we're going to say final Google sign-in. We're going to just call this Google sign-in equals Google sign-in, and this is a class, so we can simply instantiate it like that. Okay, so now we have two instances. Let's see what this is telling us. The declaration _auth isn't referenced. Okay, that's fine. We will use that in just a second. All right, so next we're going to make a function. This is going to be a future. If you're familiar with asynchronous programming, essentially what this means is this is going to be async function that will not immediately execute. So just a really basic explanation for anyone that doesn't understand what async means. Asynchronous just means that this operation will not block or stop the other operations going on in the app. So let's say I'm like waiting for someone to sign in. My app won't freeze while we wait for it to sign in. My app will be able to run. And then as soon as the sign in happens, an event will be called and something will happen. So you will kind of see how this works, but a future is just telling us that, hey, you might not immediately have this value. You might have to wait a few seconds and handle when this future is done or it's been resolved. You'll get it as we go through, but that's just kind of my basic explanation here of async. There's a lot more to talk about when it comes to that. So we're going to say future Firebase user This means we are going to return a promise, if you're familiar with kind of JavaScript related lingo, that is going to resolve and give us a Firebase user once it is done. So future Firebase user, we're going to say sign in with user like that. And this is going to be an async function. So we're going to write async, and then we'll open and close the brackets. Now, what we're going to do inside of here is get our Google sign-in account. So just so you know, all the stuff I'm showing here is just from this blog post I found that really illustrated this stuff well. So I'll link that in the description in case you care to just copy all the code out. But I'll write out with you guys and try to give kind of basic explanations as we go. So final Google sign-in account is going to be Google sign-in account like that. That's going to be the name of the variable. And we're going to await Google sign-in dot sign in. Awesome. Okay. For the ID token, what we're going to use is what we've already defined. So Google sign in authentication dot, and then can you guess? It's going to be ID token. This is taking up a lot of space here. Sorry, guys. So let's add our semicolon. That's better. And then for the access token, we're going to say this is Google sign in authentication dot access token. Awesome. So that's what we need for our auth credential. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add an auth result, which is essentially us authenticating against Firebase. So now what we've done is we have all the Google stuff ready. So we've, got our credential, we've got our sign-in authentication, the user's signed in from that UI page, and now we're going to take the auth result, which we'll get in a second, and we're going to use that against Firebase in the next few lines of code to actually authenticate the user with our application. So final auth result, this is going to be called auth result. This equals underscore auth, which is Firebase, right? So we have auth right here, which is the Firebase instance. And then we're going to say dot sign in with credential. And then we use that user credential. So now we have credential. And is that right? This needs to be an await, sorry. Let's add that right there because this is an asynchronous value. So just to kind of clarify, this part right here is all the Google related stuff. So let the user sign in, get their authentication, get a credential based on that authentication, pass that to Firebase, sign in with that, and then authenticate against Firebase. Next, we're going to say final Firebase user, which is the user that we actually want. We're going to say that's equal to user underscore auth dot user. And sorry, this is not auth, this is auth result. Okay, so I think, not underscore, just auth result. Okay, so I think we're almost done now. So now we actually have a user from this credential. Now what we're going to do is just make sure that this worked properly. So we're going to have an assertion, and we're going to say assert that not user dot is anonymous. So essentially making sure that they actually have a username, they actually have a real account, they're not an anonymous user. And then we're going to say await that user dot get ID token does not equal null. Okay, and then after this, we're going to say final Firebase user current user equals await underscore auth dot get. Oops, is this not, why is that not working? This should be dot current user. There we go. Okay, and then finally, we're going to return the user after we go up here and we make sure that this is right. So we're going to say assert that current user dot, and I think this is should be UID. Yeah, current user dot UID equals, so equals user dot UID. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this is to make sure that our signed in user with Firebase is actually the same one that we tried to sign in with. So just to summarize here, we do all the Google related stuff, sign in, get our authentication result from here. Then we use Firebase to actually sign in with that credential. And then we have a user, which is the auth result.user. So we just want to make sure that this sign in actually leads to the fact that we get authenticated against Firebase. So then when we call auth.currentUser, we want to make sure that we're getting the user that we just signed in with. If we're not, then something went wrong with this sign in and we'll get an error message because we're doing this assertion. So that's kind of just what we're doing here. That's like the basics of it. Again, I didn't write all of this. This is from the blog post, which I'll link in the description, but I just wanted to kind of walk through and at least give some basic explanation. Okay, so now that we have that, most of the auth stuff is done. We just need to change our login page so that it looks a little bit better. So we have this like build thing right here that just allows us essentially to type in our name, right? And actually, if I go to this app, oops, it's not even open right now, so I can't show you. But you remember it was just a little text box, and you just say, you know, what is my name, and press enter. We don't want that anymore, obviously. We want it to be the Google sign-in button, so we're gonna need to change this. So I'll leave the alignment. Yeah, should we leave the alignment? Yeah, I'll leave the alignment for now within the body, but let me just get rid of all the stuff within the child here. So I think that should be it for child. And now what we're actually going to do is make another function inside of here that's going to return just the login button. And then we'll add a few things to the actual body page itself. So we're going to start by inside of our login here, inside of the body state, we're going to go widget, and then we're going to call this one login button, or I'll say like Google login button, like that to be more specific. That's going to return a widget. That's why I'm defining a widget right there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to return, and we're going to return a border button. Or is it a border button? Sorry, it's an outline button is what it's called. And within the outline button, we're going to define the onPress method and all that other stuff. So first we'll say onPressed. And what this is going to do is actually be this.click. So obviously we remove the other button. So now we will call this one, but we don't need this controller text stuff. So we're going to get rid of all this text editing controller. And instead of having a string name, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to define a Firebase user of user. So what's going to happen is we're going to get the user back in here. And then from there, we can access the user's name. We can access their email, like anything about them we can access if we actually have that user. So inside of the click function, what we're going to do is actually handle the Google sign-in. So we need to first import that sign-in, or sorry, this auth from the top here. So we're going to say import and then auth.dart. So now we should be able to use this sign in with user function that we've defined. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to go sign in with user ... and then we're going to say then. And inside of here, we're going to say user, because this is going to return to us a user, and then we'll do something inside of here when we get that user. And I've just realized that I've called this method sign in with user. I actually wanted to call this sign in with Google. I don't know what I was doing when I was typing this out, but let's change this back to say sign in with Google, because that makes a lot more sense than sign in with user. And then we can come back here and modify this. So now we have sign in with Google then. What this is saying is when this is done, when we've finished all the stuff related to this, then we're going to say, let's get the result, which is going to be user. So whatever is returned is what's coming in as user here. And then we have an arrow function, and we'll define what we want to do. So what I actually want to do is I want to push to the next page. And instead of going this.name, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say user.displayName. So we're going to pass them the display name of the user. We'll get rid of that semicolon, and we'll actually say this.user equals user, just to store it in the state. And we don't need a semicolon, we need a comma. All right, so now we have the click method handled, and we're just going to sign in with Google. You'll see all of that stuff work when it's working in just a second. We'll get the user, and then we'll actually go call my homepage with user.displayName, which means instead of just passing a string, or sorry, instead of passing the string that we would have typed in before, now we'll just pass the display name of the user. Now for the Google login button, what we need to do is add a bunch of styling and add the image and all of that. So let me just go over to my other screen here, because this is going to be a bit of a long thing to type out. We're going to start by defining the shape. So the shape is going to be a rounded rectangular border. So let's find that rounded rectangular border. And then what we're going to do is say border radius is going to be equal to border radius dot circular. This is going to make it a kind of rounded edge button. And I'm going to go with 45 for the radius. So this is just telling us how much do you want the corner of this button to actually be rounded. I want it to be rounded 45 degrees. So now that we have the shape, what else do we need? Let's see. We're going to add a splash color. So what color should this button splash when we press it? Let's go with colors.gray. Okay, and next we're going to add our border side. So essentially, what do we want the border of this button to look like? Because it is an outline button. In here, what I'm going to do is say border side, and then we're going to say color, and this is going to be colors.gray again. So we're going to go with that gray style. And then we're going to say the child of this outline button is actually going to be that Google image, as well as some text that says sign in with Google. So for the child, we're going to say padding to start, and padding inside of here, we're going to say padding edge insets dot, and then from left top, right bottom. That's what this stands for. We're going to say 0, 10, 0, and 10. So just padding off the top and the bottom. We don't actually want to pad on the left and right hand side. Next, what we'll do is inside of padding, we need to put child. So let's add that here. Am I doing this properly? I think so. Yeah. Okay. So child. And what do we want for the child? Well, we want a row, and this row is going to have the Google icon as well as the text beside it. So inside of the row, what we're going to do is start by saying min axis alignment. And then I think, what is this? This is main axis alignment dot, no, not alignment, sorry. Yeah, main axis alignment dot center. And then we're going to say min axis, or what is this one? Main axis size, sorry. Main axis size, and this is going to be main axis size dot min. Okay, so what I just did here is I'm pretty much saying that I want this to all be aligned in the center, and then I want it to be as small as possible. So rather than filling the entire container, be as small as you possibly can and just fit everything in that size. That's also why I've added the padding here, so that we're going to pad on the top and on the bottom, so that this will fill up a little bit more room, because this is going to take up, you know, the minimum amount of space that it possibly can. So now that we have that, we're going to say children. This obviously needs to be a widget list, and inside of this list we're going to add all of the stuff that we want. Okay, so now we're going to add the Google logo and that text. So we need an image here, so we're going to say image, and then inside of image we're going to say image again, and then asset image, which means look in that asset folder, and we're going to say this is asset, or assets, sorry, slash, and then Google underscore logo dot, and I'm pretty sure that was PNG. So that's all we need there, and then we can define the height that we want this to be. I want this to be 35 pixels high, but sorry, that's not inside of image, or sorry, that's not inside of asset image, that's inside of image. So we're going to say height 35, so just make that 35 pixels high. Next, we'll add the text. So we're going to add some padding first of all, so that we don't squish it directly beside the image there. And we'll say padding, and then we'll go edge insets dot only, and only means, okay, we only want one side of padding, and we'll go padding on the left side. We'll pad that by 10 pixels. Then we'll add the child of the padding, which is going to be the text that we want to add. So we'll simply say text, and we'll say sign in with Google. And actually I'll make this a lowercase w, and within the text, I think, can I add a style? I'm pretty sure I can. We're going to go style, and then we're going to go text style, like that. And for the text style, I'm just going to simply make this a color gray. So we'll say color, and then this is going to be colors.gray. And then, sorry, last thing we'll do is change the font size just so that it aligns with everything else. So for the font size, we're going to go font size, and I think I'm going to go with 25 for that. That might be a little bit too big, but we will see. Okay, so now we've pretty much done the Google login button. It's inside of its own function, but to use this now, all we have to do is just simply add it as a child. So let's just say Google login button like that. I'm going to add that to our build. So now the child of our center alignment will be this button. And let's see how this looks when we actually load up our app. So I'm going to press F5, see if I broke anything or not, which is likely based on how much we just did without testing. But let's see what this is looking like. All right, so there we go. We have sign in with Google. We can see this button is popping up right in the middle of the screen, and we have that Google logo, some nice padding, and then the text. So let's see what happens when I press this. So I press that, and what happens? It immediately actually just brings me in. Now, the reason it did that is because I've already signed in with Google before. I'm going to show us how we can actually sign out in just a second, but if that's your first time pressing that, assuming that worked, you should have actually been brought to a Google sign-in page where you would have put your email and password and all of that stuff, and you would have actually signed in. But just to prove this to you, watch what happens when I type hello. You see, it actually shows my name from my Google account that I'm signed in with. So I can tell that I'm signed in because it's showing the correct name when I'm actually making one of these messages. So again, sign in with Google. If that works, you're good to go. And that's why we use this as well. It can remember who's been signed in or not. You don't need to constantly put in your username or password. Now, last thing we'll do is simply write a function that will actually let us sign out so we can test to see if this is working properly. So I'm just going to add one here, and wow, Dart Analyzer has been terminated. Sure, we can restart that. That's fine. And I'm just going to say this is a void, and I'm going to say sign out Google, and we'll make this an async function like that. And all we're going to do is say await, and this should be Google sign-in dot sign out. That's all we need to do, and that's going to sign our user out. So wait, save changes. Okay, great. Okay, so now we've made the sign out method, and I want to actually use the sign out just to make sure that that is working. So I'm actually just going to go into this login page. I'm going to go inside of my body here, and I'm going to make, it's called a lifecycle method that just essentially means as soon as this is loaded, we always do this. So it's called init state. So sorry, we're going to say at override, we're going to say void init state, like that. Okay, so what this method will actually do is automatically run as soon as this is initialized. So as soon as this page gets loaded or this body gets loaded, this will run. So this is a great opportunity to put anything we want to happen before the app actually renders inside of here, which in this case, I want them to be logged out before we actually even render this page. So what I need to do though, is I do need to call super.init state. There's just a rule here with this init state method that you have to call the super init state method, which means that comes from the inherited class here. We have to call that already. So we'll call super.init state, and then what we'll do is simply log out. So we can just say auth dot, or sorry, we don't even have to call auth. We can just say log out Google, or what did I call this method? Sign out Google, sorry. So let's go sign out Google, like that. Okay, so that should work, sign out Google. So when we initialize the state, we will sign out, and then that will force us to sign back in. So we saved that, but let me just hot reload this to make sure. And let's go here to sign in with Google. And now it did not sign us out. So this is interesting. Let me reload this app actually and see if anything's going on here. Okay, so there we go. So now it actually did sign us out. I just had to reload the app, I think, for that to actually take place. But this is saying choose an account because it automatically signed us out. But this is saving the account that I had signed in with. So we can make this kind of the standard that whenever this app gets reloaded, we sign the user out, and then they have to choose what account they want to use to sign back in. So let me pick this account, which I'm going to have blurred just so you guys don't see my email. But I'll do that. And now that signs us in. And let's go ahead and type hello, and we can see my name is popping up and everything is working properly. Now, if I go back here and click sign in, it's automatically signing me back in because, sorry, I think I might have made a mistake here. The init state will only run when this app restarts. So the first time that this login page actually gets loaded will be when we initialize the state. We can manually call this if we want to, or manually call sign out. But for now, I think the method that we currently have is fine, and we're going to go with that. So that being said, this has been a long video, but I hope this at least helps you get authentication set up and working. Again, I'm no pro at all this stuff, but I'm just learning along with you guys, and I think this is cool, and we have a lot to do now with having our authentication. In fact, in the next video, we'll probably try to store those messages in a database, and I'm looking forward to that. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and of course, I will see you again in another Flutter tutorial.